It's Tuesday, May 9th, 2023. Um, I'm really careful how I'm watching this movie, this last stand, and with some of the current headlines and what's gone on in my life. Um, Signs that I've seen as of lately. I mean, again, I know what the flag at the Red Cross looks like. Um, I know there's an XT symbol on it. Not really sure what that meant, but somebody chose to put me in that position when I was younger. Um, Without many words spoken, I was just placed there. Again, the Gilded Room last Sunday spoke of this one hidden, like there were 99 and then one was hidden. Um, I don't know why. Um, Again, they speak of mutants. I've been on mute for a long time while these moving pictures and theoreticals and announcements have been put on without, without a theater group. Like if I think of Washington as the main supplier of the war machine and the war theater, but also balancing that out with the stability feature that provides the sense of jobs, opportunity, and runs this American dream or North American dream of sorts in this section of the world. I know I'm part of the endangered population. Like, there's not many of us left. I know that they, in the Marvel or in the Revelations, they've put out there several different, um, but I stay true with the Odin and Thor since they've used the sacred geometry of numbers in order to speak in ways that XT I'm able to read through for placement and for like almost like steadying a line. Um, because when you're only one of the 10%, it is really frightening. To have to even, whatever, amongst the other 90%. But then the way that my story evolved or storyboard went, I was watching the other day, they talked of the Hydra where you cut off one branch and two grow back. Yeah, well, here's the thing. In my sense, they cut off, like, it feels like the New York branch was somehow cut off, but I still have Alexander and I. I also have Tio and I, the little one. Um, I have Frost Giants for some of the other tie-ins that they've done. So I'm watching this very carefully, how they've storyboarded this in, I was not part of this creative process, but they said in one part, Eric makes an announcement, and not the Eric that I've met at World Gym during and then they call my generation Generation X. In my 40-year-old category, each decade we go through, the baby boomers were before us, and what have they left us? I had a meeting with a person at the Kevin Costner, like the AMC movie theater, where he showed up, got out of the black SUV, sat next to me, and I was like quarantined, and the rest were in the movie theater, but I was off to the left. And that's how we sat. And I was different than the rest, which I knew. Um, so in that seated theater, um, back then as a child, and then for them in X-Men to come out with this Wolverine character, um, where he can't die. He's got this rare metal, and it's just, I mean, no matter what is, and he's got this thing going on between the mutant gene and the, um, and again, that's survival of the species, of the endangered population. Um, but I do see, like, I mean, the way, and then they put this gene mutant in this like scarlet, and I'm thinking scarlet letter, and I'm just like, what happened so early on? I mean, I did my work at Carnegie. I mean, I had both Australia was there, and some form of Southern accent was there, who had corgis, at the American Rust. I mean, I was good to their children. I was looking to them, to how they parented, so I could offset how the Glen Way house I was in was being run, to how they were parenting, to get some outside feedback for when I had children. My father had a business, Douglas Bremen. I see my three sons are the Douglases. I had three boys, now I have four. I don't understand. They gave me the letter from the GOD. They put me in the St. John's Sanctuary. There was a Red Cross. There was the X. And then the one with the Australian accent, I mean, he runs the DNA laboratory that they opened in the whaling town of Cold Spring Harbor. That's like real facility. That's like really important. So now I'm watching this character, and I'm like, I'm torn somewhere between crying and getting really angry about how the entire opportunity that I had to be a human woman in what I thought was a beautiful outer covering, that I just wanted the one that came for me and said that he was going to marry me. I don't understand why, how that led to this moment, where now I've had some crazy donkey meeting, some lathe into some blacksmith, and none of it is right. All the blood types are wrong. I mean, they're I call it toilet paper because it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't mean anything to, I mean, it's just, they were horrific, horrific. I wouldn't even call them relationships. It's just tag-alongs that, like, just horrible, distasteful, horrible. Oh God, just so glad to have escaped from it. But it still goes on, and like, there's no, like, where's the companionship as a human? What are the, like, 10% I belong to, like, so busy that, like, I mean, they don't have time. I mean, it's pathetic when I really break it down to, like, the most easy performance, and then all of the obstacles somebody created for I don't know what reason, and then some argument to, like, whatever. I mean, it's just whatever. Anyhow, so this is what it looks like as far as I'm concerned. By like 44th year and still stuck in New York with whatever's going on, This is what I feel like. I mean, I feel like I'm so angry, but where's the anger directed at? Well, I don't really know because nothing else seems to matter. It seems like the entire J crew totally failed me. If their one and only job was to get me in Nicholas's cage to like the appropriate Nicholas that wanted to marry me and that I was promised to, then this is what this looks like as far as I'm concerned. It looks like just anger at everything, give it up to God, and at the end, Wolverine comes in because he's the one who has this indestructible metal, and supposedly he still loves Jean no matter what. Or at least that's what the advertisement in propaganda sold to the general public in this area, for which I don't know if I'm being held or harmed by the 90% and the Rh positives because of the way the 10% tried answering things or conducted themselves in the beginning. But it is just this enormous, like, losing endeavor, it feels like. And I'm like, I'm still the endangered species female, which does have priority amongst the 10% that are not only trying to save themselves, but, I mean, still have a future. And I don't know where Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. come in. I don't. I'm trying to figure this all out, how they've storyboarded this, but it doesn't always work in polymathematics and science when I sit here and I put my own situation to calibrate it out.
What have I done?
Now that's Eric saying, what have I done? And not the two Erics that I met, just because I don't want to get in trouble with Thomas Jefferson and the World Gym. Like, those are two really, like, I feel like, I mean, in the moment and looking back, I mean, I'm going to cry again. Looking back on it, it's like two pieces of, no, somebody still loves you out there. But has that been perversed in somebody else's story or somebody else's conversation? I don't know. It wasn't perversed for me.
I'm the only one who can stop her. Get everyone to safety. Go. Gene!
So for me, all of this video dialogue that I've been doing looks very much like this, where it's just, I'm mad pretty much at everything at this point and how the entire system has failed me. Having been forced down this path and not really wanting to speak about it because it's so horrific. But I still have children here and they still have a future in the world somewhere. So it's almost like getting mad at everything. Nothing matters at this point. I really don't care about anything. So it's just wiping it all away and then just having it evaporate into, like, they say God is in the whatever. So up to the God. But now this message came out in 2006. I'm in 2023. I've been harmed. They've come in, first of all, I mean, the disgusting 13 years that have been wasted with some white guy with a black cross on his hand that I've told countless check-ins that I wanted nothing to do with. And yet nobody at what? Like the Knights of Columbus, who the ones that were responsible for his Catholic and his Irish Catholic and whatever else he is. I mean, they couldn't have him removed from the house. Really? I'm an RH negative. I'm RH sensitive. Like, I mean, I don't know where to go. I went to sheriff's and had him removed at one point, but that was so far into like the problem.
You would die for them.
No, not for them. For you. For you.
Save me.
I love you.
Now I'm going to rewind it to where Eric is saying that Charles likes to build bridges. So now it's interesting if you're part of the Rock 1996 edition. They mentioned this Alcatraz in that movie. And then there's some kind of suspension bridge here. I mean, they call the Golden Gate, it's a suspension bridge of some sort. I'm not sure what that pertains to, although it does have this very like Sierra color to it, crimson perhaps. So I'm looking at that and I'm watching this carefully.
Charles always wanted to build bridges.
My God.
Now, what's interesting to me is that they chose this actor who, as of late, he has, I mean, like, again, I would have to ask someone like a John Dickerson or maybe a Major Garrett. I believe I met one of them. but he looks like a man. I think that goes by the name of Fredrickson. And I think that's very interesting. I mean, like, again, notoriety is really important, except I don't know when notoriety starts to become very frightful. Now I'm gonna go to this other piece where they have that very Fredrickson looking man who does this like movie appearance in some kind of a whatever. But first, they have this new TV show coming out called Class of '09 on FX, um, which I thought was really interesting.
As a student of the FBI Academy, I devote myself to the pursuit of truth and knowledge.
In the end, we always reveal ourselves.
So here's this Logan or this Wolverine with this special metal in his bones that is watching a television reference of, again, do I call it a mimic in the field? Like, I don't want to, like, at the edge of tomorrow, they made mimics seem like something else. But mimicry, I mean, I've also heard them, the humans, refer to it as doppelganger in other. Again, I call it an epithet, but I don't want to agitate the more educate because, I mean, like, who wants to upset that? Whatever.
Nation that I introduce our new ambassador to the United Nations and the representative to the world for all United States citizens, human and mutant alike, Dr. Hank McCoy.
Way to go, Furball.
Thank you very much.
Now, again, this TV is 2006. I'm standing in 2023. And this morning I was watching the Douglases, being my three sons. And I lived in a house, my last house, just so Ion at Monroe Institute gave him his start. I lived on the corner of Monroe and West Row Boulevard. He knows who he is. And that was where I was trying to raise my four children at that time, my three sons, and the last one where, and it's also where I was in the carriage house where I went into the weird phenomenon of whatever happens in whatever they were mentioning in Thor, where I was pulled into the in-between, I call it. I mean, again, these words, they don't mean anything to most people, but there's that. So, but this morning and the house actually looks very much like the Douglas house out of the TV show from the generation before I arrived. That was when I was living in Patchogue before the house got taken away and the weirdness went on, and then the children had to be shuffled off. I mean, it feels like a kidnapping. To a mom, it feels like a forced kidnapping to go back with this crazy donkey who tried killing me in the early beginning, but yet he's walking around free. In fact, he has a law enforcement, whatever. He's got a shield of some sort. I don't know what. So there's that. So this morning, I was trying to say, like, okay, so I see that now there's this person they label as a DA with Alvin Bragg. He's somewhere in Manhattan on a different island. But he's in this New York City, however they construct that. And I'm watching how they explain to this woman this morning. She had a problem, a dog bit her hand, and they said she needed to go. And then they talk about fees, and it's like $100 an hour. Again, I don't really know what their pay scale is in 2023, but I have a date on 1960 something. They very really were saying, when management was run a different way, what the fee scale is. Again, for people who are looking for what went wrong in the world, like how did it just all of a sudden get built so out of touch and out of reach with the reality that others arrived to? Like, how did it just, like, all the sides just burst out where nobody knows how these things work any longer, and it almost is like out of reach, out of touch for the working class, for certain, like my mom and dad, but for myself, I mean, I don't even. And the other thing is, talking about liability and taking responsibility, um, when they forced the move from Glenway into the city in 95, 96, without any warning and without any words, there's this. When I was in the school in the city, they did not speak of, you're living here, you're going to graduate here, here's what you need to know, here's how the city works. Like, my whole schedule should have been on how the city planning board was, like, an introductions into the curriculum as a woman and as a, like, civilian. I mean, they should have taken me straight, or even as a private citizen, into the world of the city. I should have had meetings. I should have had curriculum that taught me what a DA was. I mean, there was none of these words spoken. They graduated me and I was completely unprepared for anything that, or however the city was operating back then. Where was the city executive? Why wasn't I having meetings with the city executive? I have a GOD on file. I was protected and put in sanctuary of the Red Cross and the X. I mean, where is the integration of systems of founding fathers and of the current whatever endangered population working with and building these bridges with the 90%? I'm just curious, how does that work and what does that actually look like? Now, I'm just saying, I saw someone who now is very famous who plays basketball as a youth. And I'm just saying, he looks awfully similar to one of these three sons. I mean, again, like, I mean, I was there from a distance when I used to babysit at Carnegie. So there's just this, like, how was the intelligent design working in, like, the greater universe for the grand schematic? I do see his mimic in this, on this thing called Me TV for the locals, and I know that he's got some position where, like, he really got to be someone in the world, unlike whatever's happened to me and was in the same vicinity. I don't really understand what happened.
Maybe take your car. Yeah.
He's innocent. I know he is.
Yeah. I'll bet you it's a frame-up, Chip. I saw a thing like that on TV. They framed this guy.
I'm just saying. He knows who he is. I remember what he looks like, and it is like a, oh my goodness, it is just looking in the catalogs of, wow, he really does look like him, doesn't he?
I want you to see what your vicious dog did to my son.
I can't tell you how sorry we are about this, Mrs. Edgerton.
Sorry? You say you're sorry when that animal could have given my son hydrophobia. A monster like that roaming the streets.
Well, I have 3 boys of my own. I know how upset you must be. Hello, Alan.
Tramp isn't a vicious dog. We just don't understand how this happened.
Well, it did happen.
How bad is your hand, Alan?
You'll find out when we go to court.
When we go to court?
That's right. I phoned the district attorney's office. I'm going to sign a complaint.
Oh. Well, I guess there isn't anything more to say.
This letter of like whatever they're speaking of, I have no idea how it works. There's been no communication from anything human. Nothing RH negative, nothing RH positive that's ever even explained the system that if you're hurt while you're in the city, this is the process. There's been nothing. And when I was out in Long Island growing up, Glenway, there was also no explanation of even county executive like process. Nothing was being taught, not at the local elementary school, not in the hours, the endless hours of boredom growing up, like completely cut off and isolated and alone. I mean, it could have been built so much more efficiently in keeping tabs and like keeping integration and in the loop and building a bridge. I mean, like to the future, but none of that was being done either, and I don't know why. Now here's them in the office speaking to the district attorney. Let's listen to the fee structure that they were using, and then I'll put a date on when it was aired on the actual television.
The question is, gentlemen, whether you want to go through with a trial. A lot of trouble and cost quite a bit.
Well, would it be a regular court trial with a jury and all that?
Well, not necessarily. It might be a hearing in the judge's chambers, but it's still pretty expensive, Steve.
Yeah. Well, we have to defend Tramp.
Oh, what'll it cost? Filing the briefs, preparing the case, my fee is $200, plus $150 a day for each day of the hearing.
$150 a day. I tried to get a divorce. Like simple, get away from the man who put his hands around my neck and tried choking me several times, and for which I never wanted to be anywhere near, and was RH positive when I'm RH negative. So it really seemed like it should have been an easy process. However, under this current situation, around the time of 2006, 2007, when that Xmen Last Stand movie came out, Campagna's bill, part of Tom Riddle, I suppose, was like around 40,000 towards the end, for which I was trying to work and pay. I mean, like, it was so hard, and it came from money that I needed to pay for the house, for the kids that I was now going to be left with. I mean, the scale is so ridiculous in like what happened to 150 an hour, and why is the billing system so far off?
Boy, you can say that again.
How long do you think the hearing would take?
A day, possibly 2.
At 150 a day. Yeah, that adds up to $500.
And that's a lot of dough. Well, I could recommend a very competent young attorney who might do the job for about $300. Why don't you talk it over? I'll wait outside.
All right.
And here's the scale on that $40,000 bill. When I went to JP Morgan Chase, I was only offered $38,000 to work in the bank. And before that, there were months I had real estate income, and then there were months that I didn't have real estate income. And I think at the time, New York City police, like, however that calculation came out, I was only going to receive like $900 for 3 kids to try to run my entire life off of. I mean, like, the money mechanics just didn't work back then. Still doesn't work now. But now I'm in a completely different situation because they've ruined my life that much worse. So this My Three Sons, it's called Tramp's First Bite, was aired on 10/3/1962. And it was season 3, episode 3, and they aired it on WJLP Me TV, channel 503. Now here it says CBS Mornings, and they're talking about the death. That goes back to these lawyer fees, kind of, sort of. So in like the 1960s, it was around $150 an hour. And then I don't know how it increased, but the wage and the money mechanics for me was not even close. And I mean, like, again, at endangered populations, like, there are so many part of the 90% that are RH positive that are getting paid like billion-dollar contracts. I mean, like, why was I like so, how is it skewed so far off? That's what I really don't understand.
And back in this country, President Biden is meeting with congressional leaders later today in an effort to find a way to raise the government debt limit and avoid a potentially catastrophic default. Ed O'Keefe is at the White House following all of it. Ed, don't call it a negotiation, they say. Good morning.
That's right. Heading into this meeting, Tony, the only thing both sides seem to agree on is that defaulting would be economically catastrophic. The leaders of the House and Senate will be here to discuss money already borrowed and the fact that now the bills are due. Republicans are trying to use this as a chance to make big cuts in federal spending. Their plan would cut about $3 trillion over the next decade, including some Biden administration priorities like climate change initiatives. The president and most Democrats say Congress needs to authorize raising the borrowing limit with no strings attached.
Now, this is where they have this elephant and the donkey. Again, I see it, and I'm just...
If things don't get sorted out in the coming weeks, the president says he hasn't ruled out invoking a little-known part of the 14th Amendment that says the validity of the U.S. debt shall not be questioned regardless of how much has been authorized. Congress has to move quickly at this point. The Treasury Secretary says the U.S. could run out of money to pay its debts as soon as June 1st. And there are just a handful of days left this month when the House and Senate are both scheduled to be in town at the same time, Nate, which means they may have to add a few to the calendar or somehow kick this down the road.
Ed, thank you. Here in New York, police have been cracking down on protesters outraged over a man's violent death on a subway train.
And then they have this in the local theater school, in my son's local school, the TO, the Frost Giant, the 2012 child, on a special timing mechanic. They put on a production. It just so happened to be Moana. That's what the playbill says. And it's in here. It says how they stole the heart of Tafiti, who's the island ruler. Now, are they talking about are they just admitting that by Disney that they already stole me from Nicholas for the original marriage I was supposed to have? Or are they in some like hypothetical, like, no, it happened, I just don't know his real name because we were in our whatever and whatever. Or are we talking about my son and I should be like concerned with local artists that are like trying to extort or exterminate, but like using some other guise or disguise? I was here on last Sunday. Sunlight still way too high for like, I mean, like that's the way it comes into my eye. It's almost like a blinding light, which is frightening in my dimension and how my anatomy is interacting with the dimensional. Which is why I wear sunglasses a lot. It's no longer this friendly, like golden light. It's this bright violet, like violent light on the eye. Um, and then um, there's some other housekeeping issues, like there's some kind of this oily substance in the water when the only water access, sometimes the tap comes through and it's brown. Don't know why. Don't know how that happens. Don't know who's running uh, the the plant, the water plant. Don't know even how to find that out. Don't know how to call these concerns in. Don't know who takes these levels of concerns um, and works miracles in the back end to make sure that I'm not being accidentally poisoned. Um, then there's also been changes to some of the food that's been going on in the headlines for a while. I don't know, again, who's in charge of FDA and that level of administration and regulation. Um, in this Last Stand movie with Xmen, it really concerns me. They were creating some needle, like some that almost like a vaccine type of a thing, where they can change mutants into something else. Again, this goes back to like epigenetics and like the who's who and the what's what. Um, no matter what they do, if I need a blood transfusion, it's never going to come from the humans and the 90%. It's going to come from the 10% population that's left on this planet. Because the 90% in a blood transfusion, medical tissue donation, or whatever, the 90% is what really will hurt or kill. And those are just facts. That's medically proven facts. And the people that study medical arts here and elsewhere know that there's a specific part of the population. Now, the other thing is, in the city, in my daily survival here, I have access to my son and Linda and Lou, who are in the correct 10% endangered population. But most of the rest of the population, to like a 98% of my life, is spent around RH positives. I mean, I don't even have like, maybe on Sunday I now in the correct house of God see a few remaining endangered population, but it is very few and far between. We used to be much more plentiful in this area, but now there's been movements of other populations and almost like an encroachment and it into like our safety, and our numbers are so dwindling and I don't know where they went. I don't know how to correct this and migrate myself to wherever safety is in numbers. I don't. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.